Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm just going to give it another minute or so while participants are still joining. As soon as we see the participant numbers kind of stabilize, we'll go ahead and jump in. Looks like it is stabilizing. Okay, well, the number's not climbing nearly as fast as it was before. It looks like our participants are here, so we can go ahead and get started. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for another BEAD Grantee Office Hours. If you've not had a chance to join our office hours before, I would encourage you to visit our BEAD landing page. Kristen just pasted a link into the chat for that. Um, there's a lot of great resources on that page, including recordings of these office hour meetings. So if you miss one, or if you forget some of the nuance of the conversation, or I guess if you just like us so much you want to watch us again, you can go there and find links to the recordings, as well as a lot of other helpful resources and links, like a link to the FAQ document that we'll talk about in a couple of slides. Um, Before we really get going with today's topic, I want to cover a few housekeeping items. Megan, can we go to the next slide, please? So the format is the same as usual. We will cover a compliance aspect of the BEAD award. We will make time for questions and answers. And then, of course, like I said, this will be recorded, so you can catch this again afterwards if you like. Um, Please, you know, save your verbal questions until the end. You can go ahead and put your questions into the chat while we're giving our presentation, and we will address those at the end. And if we don't get a chance to address all the questions during the call today, we will add those questions to the FAQ document, which we update weekly. Um, so, and I believe the FAQ, the most recent version of the FAQ, yes, thank you, Kristen, has also been pasted into the chat. So you can see that directly in the chat window. So with that, let's go ahead and switch over to the next slide. Um, so what we want to do now is we just want to talk about a few of the general themes of questions that came in over the last week or so. Allie and I are going to tag team this slide before I turn it over fully to Allie to give us a bit more information about our financial surety options. But I'll go ahead and jump in with the first one. So the first kind of theme of questions we've been getting a lot has to do with signing people up for training. So lots of questions that are something like, how can I sign an additional person up for this training, or so and so needs to be added. Can you add this person to the compliance training portal? We have actually given you full control over that process. So you can do these things yourself, and you can add additional people for the training portal if you'd like. So instructions are in the FAQ. That's FAQ number 2.2. And again, Kristen put that link in the chat already. Allie?
Yeah, so the other thing that we've gotten a couple of questions about is that network plan schema. Um, we emailed that to you in the email that came out that was talking a little bit about this office hours. Hopefully you'll find that it makes things a little more straightforward. Hopefully it answers some of the questions that we've been getting, so you know exactly what needs to be in there. We encourage you to take a look at it. We also encourage you to take a look at the BEAD Provisional Onboarding Guide. There were a couple of clarifications that we added there. Again, hopefully it's primarily clarification, not changes for you. Just to make that a little bit easier, we put those in red for you so you can see what changed. It can be hard to just look at two versions of a document. So that's in there in red. There's the network plan schema is an attachment for your team. We did get a couple of questions about additional time for the uploads. You get, and just as a reminder, when you have completed accepting, if you will, the award within the grant portal, we'll send you an email that says you're ready to go to start uploading your documents. Can you upload them by X date? Right now, we're not changing that date. If you need more time, just shoot us an email, ask for an extension. We're happy to entertain it, but the date that you got is the date that we're sticking with for now, unless we get an extension request. And the reason for that, y'all, is because we have to review those documents on the other end, and we just want to make sure we're as prepared as we can be to be ready to start issuing grant agreements. And so want to just be making sure we're giving ourselves enough time for the review as we're ready to move into grant agreements. John?
Yeah, great point, Allie. Another theme of a lot of questions and feedback we've been getting, of course, is we've solicited you all for feedback about the milestones, and we've gotten lots of great feedback on that. We've made some revisions, and we hope to have some time at the end of this call to give you all a brief update on that.
Um, and I think the other burning question that we are getting from from grantees is questions about pre subrecipient award or agreement costs. So NEPA, engineering, purchasing, and the feds finally came out with some guidance on that in their new fax update. So we are integrating that feedback, and we'll have some guidance for you in the upcoming week or weeks, hopefully sometime next week. So we're thrilled to have that more explicit guidance from the feds to be able to pass along. Next slide. So the topic of conversation today is letters of credit. I just want to remind many of you the requirements for the letters of credit are slightly different from your payment and performance bonds. We just really haven't gotten a lot of questions about payment and performance bonds. So let us know in the chat if you'd like us to go over that at some point. But generally speaking, that information, it seems like people are more accustomed to. So the letter of credit is a little different. This is the first time we've done this for grant programs. We're kind of emphasizing it here. So we put out two new documents this week, a letter of credit template. So the requirement from the feds is that the submission of the letter of credit has to be based on the RDOF letter of credit template. So we have adjusted this for you. It is linked on our website. Kristen's dropped it into the chat. And then the feds, in a really great way, broadened the requirements for the bank that can issue a letter of credit, right? So originally it was there was a specific WISE rating, and now they said just well capitalized. So in addition to the letter of credit template, we have a certification form that you will send over to your bank as well. The certification form will, the first checkbox is we are WISE rated according to the original requirements. If that's the case, you can sort of stop there and don't need to go any further beyond a signature. If you are using a bank that doesn't meet those original NTIA requirements, we've got a couple of other checkboxes. Your bank can just check one of those, attach the supporting documentation, and send it in, and that'll allow us to be able to use that bank for your letter of credit. Next slide. So a couple of comments here. So we would prefer one letter of credit per project. Now, the NTIA has just come out with guidance that says you can do one letter of credit for all your projects. Let us know if that's something that you want to do. We strongly suggest that you may want, if it doesn't cost, especially if it doesn't cost you any additional funds, to split this up across projects because you will not, we at 10%, we are at the least amount possible to be able to accept a letter of credit. We can't go any lower than that, which means adjusting that letter of credit requirement gets harder. Where if you have one letter of credit per project, the letter of credit can just terminate. So certainly that's something that we suggest. What we it also should be one bank per project or one financial institution per project. So, um, not two letters of credit for the same project from different banks. Um, You'll see when you look at the letter of credit template that there's a request for the project ID. When you go into Salesforce, you'll see your award ID. That's the number you should be using. So the project ID number is the Salesforce award ID number. And then we've had a couple of questions about what is the required amount for the letter of credit? Again, this is different from the payment and performance bond, but for the letter of credit, it is your total project cost, 10% or 25% of your total project cost, which is the BEAD subsidy plus the match amount. And then what does the value need to be for our terrestrial grantees? That's 10%. It's the lowest allowable by NTIA, and 25% LEO, also the lowest allowable by NTIA. Next slide. CBO will review your letters of credit. When we review them, we just want to be really transparent about what we're going to be checking so we don't have to go back and forth with y'all and that you don't have to go back to your bank because we realize it can be really frustrating. So we're going to be double checking that project identification number. And that project ID number is used in multiple places in that letter of credit. So you just want to double check and make sure you've gotten it everywhere. And that the letter of credit number is consistent throughout the document and the annexes or the appendices. We're going to check and make sure that there were no changes from the CBO template to this, and that when you type out the the words and then you type out the number, that those two things match. Again, if you don't mind just giving that a once over before you send it our way, we sure do appreciate it because it'll save us a lot of time in going back and forth if we don't have to keep an eye on those little things. Next slide. Oops. I think when you are submitting your letter of credit, you're going to be submitting just two things. You'll be submitting the letter of credit itself. If you'll, again, please review those amounts, the project ID, and then you'll be submitting the certification form as well. So you're going to select the correct box, attach the required documents, and then make sure that it gets signed. Both of those items will be uploaded to Salesforce with the rest of your documentation. Next slide. So we're happy to take questions in the chat about letter of credit, but I would imagine that you've been wondering a lot about milestones. So I'll hand it to Judd. Yeah, he's here to chat a little bit about where we are now based on your feedback for milestones.
Yeah, I guess we could take questions now on letter of credit or just wait to the end. I noticed there's some in the chat as well, so any of those that can be answered, that'd be great. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say on the milestones, we sent out the grant agreement. We got a lot of good input on the grant, the whole grant agreement, but we specifically asked about the milestones. And thank you. We heard you. We did get a lot of comments. To sum up some of the comments, I think two of the most important ones were more milestones, which you'll see we have more. And the other one was, can you front load some of these milestones a little bit more to get you up and off the ground with payments? Because we realize, way before even now you've probably already incurred expenses. And way before the shovel hits the ground, you're going to incur expenses. So we've tried to front load some of that. And what we did is we waited to put this out because we pressured NTIA and our new field program officer, to go back and get clarification. Can you get paid for some of the activities ahead of NEPA? Because the way that it was drafted before, when they first came out, it was pretty clear you could not issue dime number one until NEPA was not only submitted but approved. But they gave a FAQ 18 that came out about a week ago, and in 10.7 they clarified, yes, you can get payment for some of these activities ahead of NEPA approval. They gave some examples, and we looked at those, and we tried to work with some of the examples. And I know some of you are probably going to say, well, a lot of states are doing, upon execution of the agreement, you can get paid. That may be true for some states, but we have some state Office of the State Controller limitations in that you really have to have done work, not just scribbled your name on a piece of paper. There has to be actual accountable work, allocable, allowable, reasonable. And then it also has to fall into those categories that they gave in Section 13E of our general terms and conditions of what's allowable ahead of NEPA. So, working with those constraints, we tried to come up with some milestones that are ahead of NEPA, but also satisfy the state's requirements that you have to have actual work done. And then the payment percent has to kind of reasonably compensate you for that. It can't go over. We can't do pre-awards at all. And then, it shouldn't be too far under. So you'll see from this, the first four milestones are all ahead of NEPA. And you can satisfy any or all of these in any order, except for 6 through 9, and then the last one. But any of these you can do. So even on day one, if you submit, I've satisfied milestone 1 and 3, you can do 1 and 3. So you can get paid for all of these. So we tried to put the percent, and then we tried to put the percentages kind of in commensurate with what the work is being done. So we just walk down these. CBO's approval of grantees EHP. So the process is you have to submit your EHP plan to the CBO. We work with you. We may have to send it back to you, and then you send it back. But we get to a point where we submit it, the CBO does, to the NTIA. And that's a fair amount of work. So that's 10%. And hopefully, I know a lot of grantees are already working on their EHP. So, that could be done fairly quickly, even after grant execution. That's 10%. Submission and CBO approval of grantee's final permitting plan. You may recall in your application, you have a permitting plan. Some people were very good about being quite detailed on all the permits they need. And you could almost cut and paste that. We want to have evidence that you have actually talked to these permitting agencies, that it's in place. You do not have to get the permits. So we heard that loud and clear as well. Sometimes you have a staggered permitting plan, but we want a complete plan, start to finish. The permits do not have to be pulled or paid, but we need a good, solid plan that we believe you can execute. And you've talked to all of the permitting agencies. So, like I said, you could almost cut and paste that from your application because you had a good outline started there. And that's worth 5% is what we allocated for that. Milestone 3 is procurement. And this is procurement of all the materials, all the BABA compliance. Show that you have that you have not purchased any prohibited equipment, and then also including your subcontractors. And this does not have to be paid. It doesn't have to be, it could be binding MOUs. Hopefully it's binding somehow agreements or contracts. You don't have to have paid it out though. So we just want to have in place all of those ready to go, ready to execute. And then when you get to the payment or when you actually get to procurement or using that subcontractor, maybe there's some contractors way down the road, it's already in place. So that one, again, clarification, you don't have to have paid all these. We wouldn't expect that up front. The next one is approval of final make-ready plan, including a negotiated cost. What we've seen from prior grant programs is this is probably the biggest stumbling block. And grantees get out there in the field and they said the make-ready was 500,000 and it's 2 million. And then things start to go south from there. So we want to see a very good, solid make-ready plan. Again, doesn't have to be paid out. All of those, like, let's say the pole improvements or pole replacements, but we want a good plan, again, showing that you have talked to those make-ready partners and have a good plan, including what is the actual cost. Oh, and by the way, let me back up a little bit here. We are going to come out with further clarification for actual documentation you are going to need for each one of these milestones. So if you can imagine a third column, we will have a third column that probably in our policy or guidance or maybe our reporting requirements that show you exactly what you need to submit to prove that you met this milestone. So this one, we need to have evidence you've talked to all the make-ready parties that could come into play, you know the price, and you're ready to pay that down the road, possibly when you get there. So that's that one. That's quite a bit of effort. That's 10%. Number five, that's your gold star right there. Your gold star on your forehead that says you get to proceed to construction. And this one is not a lot on your effort. You submitted it in milestone one. This is mostly the NTIA approving what you've submitted. So it's mostly on them, but you get 5% if once you get that uh, NEPA or EHP approval. And we have some footnotes that you'll see in our final template. They were in our draft template too, but one of the footnotes will be you cannot proceed to 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 until you have NEPA approval. So no dirt, no shovels hit the ground before NEPA approval. But once you get that, you fall into this cadence you can see of percent complete, 25, 50, 75, 100. Again, complete. I think we had a call earlier on this office hours. We're generally going to measure that by houses passed. If there's some unique build out that requires some other measurement, we're open to that. You just have to contact your grant manager, but most likely it's going to be percent houses passed. Then you get to 100%. All locations can be served. That's the 10-day rule. So basically, you've done everything but the drop. And then we do withhold 10% for project closeout. So if you add up all those percentages up above, there should be 10% remaining, and you get that 10% upon project closeout. And the other thing I should have said up front too, this is, of course, is for what we call the regular BEAD, terrestrial BEAD. Leo, I know there's some Leo folks on the call. That's going to look a little bit different. We haven't quite gotten there on that. We're not going to be doing inspections in space. So we have this one for terrestrial. So that's all I had, unless yeah, Allie or John or other
Thanks,
Michael, if you have
Judd. Um,
comments.
and just wanted to sort of clarify or put a finer point on what Judd is saying. Our intention really is that milestones 1 through 4, we know that some of these are going to be iterative, right? So you have a network design plan uh, that determines where you believe you're going to need permitting, but it may change a little bit when you submit it to the state and our consultants start working on your or your consultants work with our consultants or whatever on your NEPA review and realize maybe you want to move a little bit to the west, right? To be able to avoid some wetland. So we know that some of this is going to go back and forth, which is why we've got things like the final permitting plan or final make ready plan. We know that things are going to shift a little bit from your initial network design. I think we've talked about that in a couple of meetings before. But we hope that the format in which you're sending us the network design is actually going to layer really nicely on our EHP map, our permitting environmental permitting map, so that we'll be able to make those analysis relatively quickly. Um, I think that's it for this. It looks like we have some questions. So
I,
next slide.
I was just going to add, if
Oh.
for our Leo partners, if you can get me to space and get me back safely, I'm willing to go. That's an option.
There.
Uh, all right, next slide before we take a couple of questions. Just again, it's the same slide we put up every time, but just wanted to remind you of the items that'll need to go into be uploaded into Salesforce. So this is your financial management questionnaire, your certificate of insurance, your surety, either your performance bond, your payment and performance bonds, so your letter of credit, your cybersecurity and supply chain risk management plans, and then this certification of no additional public funding with your network design too. We've started seeing some requests for assistance around the cybersecurity and supply chain risk management. Glad to see it. Definitely want to be able to support you in this pre-award space. So if you need help with that, that information's on our website. Next slide. All right, so we have questions in the chat. We'll get to them. We'll start at the top. Hey, Laura. Alrighty. Okay. PE shapefile. This may be a question for Michael. Well, let's see what we can do. So, or Megan. So, serviceable locations. First question, building type. Are we looking for the fabric building type code? MDU is not explicitly designated as a building type within the fabric data. So good.
Yeah, that we are looking for the building type code that's in the fabric. That's what we have right now to go by. If you find out through your build that it is different, then whenever you do your uploads for locations served, we would look for that to be updated at that time. I believe the on the fabric, and Megan, correct me if I'm wrong, it may not say MDU, but it may have a different count of units for a residential. Um, so if you have that information from the fabric, we'd like to see that that's multiple units. The next one, as far as electronics, can CBO provide example of what we're looking for? So what we would be looking for is as you come off of your main line with feeders and then you have the drops, what's in the little pot before you go in? It's probably a splice. And then when you get onto their house, you're probably terminating it in a termination box. And any electronics you have in that termination box, it's not usually much, but we would like to see what's there at that point. Backhaul and interconnection points. So yes, we understand that you may not give us all the splice points, but there are planned splice points in every network because you can only go so far before you probably want to splice because of tension, pulling fiber or blowing the fiber, or whatever you're doing with it. So if you have planned splice points that you know of, that's what we're looking for. And it would probably increase as you build out, but I'm suspecting that you're going to have a set number of handholds you go through before you splice. Let's see. Broadband office requiring splice point details at this stage. Okay, so that's later. Okay, path layer, additional conduit. So what we're asking for there, Laura, is if you plan to put in a spare conduit, we'd like to know that you're putting in a spare conduit. It's not something that we're going to prohibit. You can put as many conduits in as you want. We just would like to be aware that there's extra conduit there if you are, so that we've had instances in the past where we've been notified that we're paying for two conduits via the grant, and we weren't. They were putting in an extra conduit, but it was at their expense. So, we just need to know that. Let's see. Redundancy, resiliency paths. Could you please define what is meant by primary versus secondary path? So as you're designing the network and you're doing the layers on the network, there is a preferred path of travel for the data, and then a backup path potentially, or a secondary path. And we just like to have that identified so that we know that or that we can tell that there's redundancy and it's not a collapsed ring, if you will. And it's not in it. And we'd like to know where the stranded points are if there is, God forbid, a fiber cut anywhere in your network. Let's see. Additionally, how should this be denoted in the data, i.e. field attribute, naming convention? It would be in one of the attributes of the lines that you have in your data. And hopefully that answers that. And then last, let's see, polygon layer. For the node level polygon showing the area covered by each node, can this polygon be generated based on the network path that encompasses all node elements? If so, should the same 200 foot? Yes, that would be the best way we would expect. We would hope that you would do it that way. Now, we've had some questions and concerns around the 200-foot buffer. This would be a 200-foot buffer that could be served from there with all, easements and everything. We don't want any violation of easements or anything like that. So I think one example we had is where if you have houses back to back and you're going down one road and you're serving houses on that side, even though the house on the back side of that is less than 200 feet, you wouldn't typically serve that from this path. So that wouldn't be considered a passed location. Did that answer
Thank
all
you,
your
Michael.
questions, Laura?
It did. Um, for the splice points and the ONTs,
Hmm.
those we will not be able to provide as part of our shapefile package for any new routes by the 23rd. That is going to take a little bit longer to go through our design process. We
Okay.
can provide that information for any existing infrastructure.
Okay, so you'd have that for your existing infrastructure, but on your planned infrastructure, there are standards that you don't exceed so many feet before you splice because you just can't pull that much fiber because of the tension that you're pulling it. So there would have to be some splice points that are known. Maybe not the OLTs, but at least splice points should be known, Laura.
So it doesn't really follow our standard design process. Some of these are going to require data collection
Okay.
in order for us to actually run our process, our design process, and get the splice points. Um, we use like a minimum spanning tree
Hmm.
approach for that. So
Okay.
it will be challenging, to say the least, to provide those by the 23rd. And in fact, I
Okay.
challenging is an understatement.
Yeah.
Um, that is not something that we would be able to provide.
Okay. So if it's something that you could provide at a later date, just let us know what that date is, and we can talk through if that's going to be within a time frame that we would like or that we can both agree on, well, then that would be fine. If it's outside of the time frame, we can have a discussion about what information we can accept.
Okay, that sounds
Yeah.
great. And
Yeah.
then in terms of the redundancy
Hmm.
and primary paths, so we usually refer to that as a ring.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking for there.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay,
That's exactly what we're looking for. Uh,
perfect.
and I'll tell you, in my early days, and this has been a long time ago, um, we used to design rings that were called collapsed rings. They were multiple pairs of fibers, but they were in the same conduit. That's what we're trying to avoid because one backhoe fade and all your paths are gone.
Okay, sounds good.
But it's good to know if there is a collapsed ring, it's good to know that could be a stranded location if there was a fiber cut. It's just good for us to know that and identify it.
Yeah, um we build in redundancy with our
Yeah,
network design, so
perfect.
we should be good there.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes.
If I had tried that, it would have been a disaster. So, so grateful for you. Um, Cynthia, cover performance bonds. No, that's a question I can answer. I can do that for you with confidence. For those of you that are interested in payment and performance bonds, we have a good amount of information in the compliance and reporting guide that is on our website and our compliance library. It's also in that model grant agreement that you would have gotten. But just as a quick summary, um, the performance bond needs to cover 100% of the grant funds amount. It needs to be submitted to us. The feds just updated this requirement within 60 days After the signing of the grant, if you're not able to get it beforehand, we prefer you get it beforehand. And just as a note, the feds are very clear on their instructions that if we do not receive it within 60 days, we must terminate the grant. And so we would much prefer if you're able to get it prior to the execution of the grant, we can. We do understand that in some cases your surety company will need a signed contract before they're willing to issue a bond. So if that is the case, if you will upload, if you're going to get a payment of performance bond, you will not be able to get it until after the signed contract. Upload a explanation of who you're going to be getting your payment and performance bond from, the fact that how soon you'll be able to get it after the grant agreement is signed, and the dollar amount that you're planning to get it for. That would be great. The payment and performance bond form is in your grant agreement. So if you look at the model grant agreement, I can't remember which exhibits it is, but it's probably like, I don't know, D&E or something like that. So if you take a look at the model grant agreement that we sent out, you'll be able to find those forms there that you can send over to your surety company to have completed for the payment and performance bond. Cynthia, that's a high level summary. Happy to answer any more questions. You're welcome to hop off mute. Did that answer your question there? We're good. All right, moving on. Mark, great question here. So Mark's saying in Facts 8.2, we have reference submitting insurance expense for payment with an applicable milestone. What does that mean? Because we're doing fixed amount subawards. And thanks. While Michael was talking, I looked at this. I see John also came on camera. We will clarify that 8.2. You're right. You don't need to submit it to us for reimbursement. What we're trying to say really is that it's eligible for reimbursement. So sorry about that. That's love your attention to detail. You're amazing, and we'll get that cleaned up. John, did you have anything else to add there
No,
that
I
I
think you
missed?
pretty much covered it. I just wanted to kind of say the same thing that you did, Allie, in that this is not a cost reimbursement mechanism. It's based on these fixed price milestones. So we didn't want to give the impression that we'll be reimbursing against specific costs and need to view the receipts or anything like that. The payments are indeed based on the fixed price milestones. It's just that this is an allowable expenditure under the program. So it's a good distinction to make. Thanks, Allie. I think you covered it.
Anything else there?
So
Mark, did you have any other? Yeah,
Allie and John, I guess what we'll need to do, and like I said, documentation requirements for all those milestones will be coming out. I think
great.
what we may need to do then is define where your insurance expense, which one of those milestones you could submit it with, to tuck it under one of those milestones.
Yeah, we'll get some additional detail out.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Jed. Yeah, good call. Kate asks, confirming the level of detail for the PE certification, does it need to be as granular as the capital budget detail tab from the application, or are y'all able to use the high-level project costs that were resubmitted to the CBO after you did your one-on-one call with the grant officer? Yeah, Kate, that one-on-one high-level project cost is perfectly acceptable. Our hope is that you'll be able to reuse some of that stuff, save yourself a little bit of time. So that would be just fine. And then question number two, the budget that you submitted during the one-on-one call can be used for the capital investment schedule as well. That is correct. You had a timeline, I believe, as well, John, that was submitted after the one-on-one call. That will suffice as your capital
Yes.
investment schedule as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
hoping, we're trying. We know it's a lot, but we're trying to make it a little easier.
Yeah. The deliverables spreadsheet that you provided back, Kate, as well as the budget can be used for these.
Like, thanks.
Great. David asked, so a question about the milestone, the procurement binding contracts. How does it work? Knowing that construction is construction. Y'all are going to have some variations that'll happen during a project. If you change from aerial to underground, you don't want to buy 10,000 handholds to find out you only need 8,000. How firm do the contracts need to be? Um, or is it just a vendor saying, yes, we can supply this equipment and commit to set pricing? You bring up a great point, David. Uh, Judd answered, a binding application with a contractor to build out all the handholds necessary for the project is fine, especially from the contractor's perspective. Um, a couple of things that we're really trying to get at here is making sure that we're not going to have unintended delays or expenses, right? Early on at the front end, that's the intention of the make ready milestone, and it's in the intention of the contracting milestone. Um, so we can take this back and talk a little bit more about the details. So to Judd's point, we're going to be putting out exactly what that documentation needs to look like. This is a great point. We'll talk about it. Um, but yeah, but our intent is to make sure that we've got that you're looking at BABA certification, you're making sure you're paying attention to it, that you're paying attention to the prohibition of um, against prohibited telecommunications equipment as you're building out your procurements. Judd, I saw you came off, or I thought you did. Did you have anything to add to that?
No, I just tried to answer it as best I could. These might be binding, we say binding contracts, could be an MOU where the contractor just says, I can supply whatever this project needs. If it's 10,000, it's 10,000. If it's 8,000, it's 8,000. But so, something like that. But we'll get back to you a little bit more definitively on what documentation we're looking for. And again, they don't have to be paid.
Marvina asks, the letter of credit needs to come before the contract is signed and not by 223. Is that correct? Judd said yes. It needs to be submitted before the grant to execution. Just as a reminder, though, we have to review it. So that 223 deadline gives us time to review in advance of executing the grant agreement. So any delays mean that your grant agreement execution also, unfortunately, will likely be delayed. So just encourage you to get that over. Once you've got it, get it over to it as soon as possible. And if you are going to be uploading a packet of documentation that is not complete, we will have to prioritize grantees that submit complete documentation first. So when we're looking at reviews, we'll be reviewing full and complete documentation for execution of those grant agreements. Craig is asking, which fabric version should we use for the BSL buffer points? Same version as used for previously awarded BSLs. It's a great question. I don't know, Megan, if you would have an answer to that, or Michael.
I think it's the same version. The locations that have been submitted to NTIA are using version 3.2, which is the original version that all the applications were submitted under. So we need to base all of the data on that to begin with. Moving forward, we'll be able to make adjustments to those locations.
David was asking, oh, thanks. Craig, did you have any other questions? Did that get what you needed?
Yeah, I think the fabric keeps getting better. So the quicker you can get to the latter versions, the better we know what's going on. But also, if you have a view on the permissibility of us doing that with our fabric licenses with CQA. So I don't know, Judd, if you have a view on that, if asking awardees to do that with our fabric licenses, if that is the permissible use.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with what licenses you have, and there's different licenses you can obtain. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure what the your particular license is. The states is very different.
Yeah, and Craig, I have a question into the NTIA that I'm still waiting for a response um on how we will be able to make updates. Um, so I can add on to that questions about the future of that license and the terms of use. Um, and see if we can get that info from the NTIA. Otherwise, we can track it down from the CostQuest side.
Okay, thank you.
David, you were asking about the design schema, probably that I dropped in the chat. Is it for the pre-agreement design or the make-ready milestone? It is the pre-agreement design. So this is the certified PE network design. That's the schema there. Any other questions, David, on that one?
No, just that's going to be a fun thing. I mirror some previous sentiments that that's a lot of work to pull together quickly for projects, but we will do our best and we'll keep in touch.
Thanks, David. Yeah, definitely keep in touch. So, Mark, you asked, I think probably I answered this already, but what needs to be uploaded by the 23rd for the performance design? I'm sorry, for the performance bond. Fax says it can be obtained 60 days after grant execution. Yes.
Yeah, you
NTIA is
covered
now
that.
no. Okay, great, great. So, just as a reminder, you're going to need to upload something, not nothing, and we have to terminate your grant at 60 days, according to the feds, if we don't have it.
Got it.
All right, anything else there, Mark? Are we good? Are you good?
Yeah, I am. No, that
Okay,
answers it.
okay, thanks. David, we got another one. Are you allowed to, oh, this is a great question. We get this a lot. Are you allowed to have the GC put up the performance bond with the state as effectively as additionally insured? We know the bonding companies prefer to work with contractors. Our preference is to have it bonded to the state. If you have a problem with that, if you're not able to get it, reach out to us. Um,
Okay, so sorry, is that something that we're allowed to have the GC have the state listed on there, or I guess does it?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a little more complicated than that. So, if you, I think what we would ask is try to get it yourself first. If that cannot happen for some reason, not a preference thing, but an inability to get the performance bond, we will have to put you in touch with our risk management team at the state and elevate the issue. So, um, yeah, but in some cases, hopefully we would be able to help.
Okay, sounds great.
Yep,
Thanks.
sure. Brian. Oh yes. Question about breaking the project into two NEPA reviews and just to maybe easier to talk it through. If you can want to come off mute, love to hear your question.
Thanks, Ellie. I am. And first off, thank you guys so much for the milestone changes. I really appreciate you guys listening to us and making those changes and putting the work in. So these new milestones really look much, 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 much better. So yeah. So the question is, I noticed in the recent NTIA FAQ and I was surprised, is it says we can actually break up our project into two separate projects from a NEPA perspective, which historically has not been allowed. And you could basically, so, like if we wanted to work on one part of the project now and one part of the project next year, we could break it up and, get the NEPA review for the part this year and move, and then, do the NEPA review later for the part that we're going to do next year. How does that how do you guys envision that working with this process? And have you even thought about that? And or am I opening a can of worms that I shouldn't open, or what?
We actually already did talk about it. We were like, oh my gosh, but what about the, multiple project areas? So what will have to happen is if if you start going through your NEPA process and you realize that you can do categorical exclusions for the majority of your project, but there's one part of your project that is just going to be a beast to get through. And this is what Brian's talking about for those of you that aren't familiar with it, right? That you can kind of keep on moving on a portion of yours while the remainder of your project is pending review either by NEPA or permitting. NTIA has given us the ability to split, to sort of subdivide a project. So it still maintains a main project at the grant level, but then for the NEPA purposes of the NEPA review, it splits into two. So if we decide to do that, if you all decide that's best for your project and we agree, the other part of that is going to be having a conversation about um, if you're allowed to move forward with construction, does that mean that we still get a complete some version of a completed project, right? Um, in the end, and if that's the case, then we will look at splitting the milestones and figuring out on a percentage basis NEPA project area one, NEPA project area two, and then how those milestones fall out. And it will be a grant amendment. So it'll be a collaborative conversation between both y'all and us and probably our EHP consultants. And then we'll split your budget into two pieces. Very formally, we'll split it into two pieces.
Yeah, but I mean, realistically, yeah, we just kind of go and say one project's 35%, the other project is 65%. So we're just going to split all the milestones appropriately. And that's kind of
Effectively, that's how we're going to do it. Yeah, there will be some additional considerations, but basically that's it.
yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Did I see that you came off?
No, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, if you can imagine, Brian, like another column on that milestone payment, or
Yeah.
maybe two. One would be 90% is here and 10% here. So on the 10%, you'll get 90% of the 10%. And
Yeah.
we'll hold the other 10% of 10% for each milestone. And then, like I said, we're going to pay out basically on the once you start digging on houses passed or subscribers that can be served within 10 days. But we also have a footnote that says, or such other milestones as we might deem necessary. And if we had to make some adjustments there, like you could get in your backhaul, you could get in your main line and all that, we, we're open to talking about that. We're going to have to come up with those percentages. Is it 90-10 or 80-20? We'll have to figure that out.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. And then that I'm glad to hear that. And we can definitely work with that idea. So that makes me happy.
Good.
Thanks, Brian. Great question. And Stephen asked for companies that are going to go 100% underground. So you're not going to have make ready costs. What's the substitute for milestone four? This is a great question. We will make sure that we added some additional clarification. Judd answered you in the chat. Again, we're going to have more documentation requirements, but maybe we need to tweak that language around that milestone four as well to make sure that we're all inclusive. Judd referenced this when he was speaking. We are finding that this is our number one failure point for broadband projects is make ready and easements. And so this is a tricky milestone. It's a hard milestone. We understand that this is a lot of negotiation goes into this. And what we wouldn't want would be to approve this milestone and get halfway down the project and then realize you can't go underground, you got to go overhead, and now we've got a make ready problem. So you could probably anticipate that to Judd's point, these evidence that you have easements, the required easements, or you have a path for the right of way, will be required. But we'll take it back. We'll look more at it, for sure. Yeah, we appreciate so David's comment is also kind of the thanks for the new milestones. We really appreciate those of you who took the time to send in feedback, both on that and the grant agreement. We found it to be incredibly useful. Lots of commonalities across your comments, and happy to find something that we hope works a little better for you. Your GIS team is asking, what coordinate system do you want the network design in? Oh.
I was just typing a response, but I'll say it out loud. Generally, we can work with any of the common coordinate systems. we often use WGS 84, but flexible. If you're when you submit, you can specify if it's not in the metadata of the files you submit. But generally, we can work with whatever.
Any other questions there, David?
No, that's perfect, and that is way over my head. I hate all the GIS stuff. I asked for one of my guys, so thank you. That's helpful. I relayed that. He's satisfied. Thank you.
Perfect.
Perfect. And Laura asked if there are any path layer attributes or if that's something that will be added. Oh my goodness, Laura, I don't know. Um,
We'll have to take a look at that because I thought we did add attributes to the path layer. So we'll take a look at that, Laura, and we'll get that out if that was overlooked.
Okay, thank you.
and David is asking, is just commenting in our last 3 minutes. We won't have make ready exact costs until you've done the survey, submitted, and waited for months for it to get back. We do understand that. We do understand that that is quite a process. So we'll again have additional information on required documentation, but our intention here is not to use estimates, but to approve actual cost because again, this is our single greatest point of failure for broadband projects is make ready at this point. So yeah. Is mid-March still the estimate for contracts, assuming everything else is pre-approved? The number one question you're getting on your side for planning and timing. I completely understand that. We sure do hope so. So, we don't have any, well, Michael, I should ask Michael, but I don't believe we have any full packets in for many of you yet. So we're not really able to estimate yet what it's going to take, how much time it's going to take us to do the review and then have you prepped and ready for the execution of your grant agreement. But boy, that's what we're working towards. We're trying really hard to be able to, for those of you that are ready and that you have projects that are ready, we're really trying to make that timeline. So, um, and did anybody else have anything to add to that one?
No,
No.
nothing
Okay.
left to add, nothing else to add to that.
Oh, oh my gosh. I just got a chat from Kristen privately because I completely forgot to solicit from you all, and I will solicit it again next week. Any topics that you'd like us to cover in future office hours.
Yeah.
So next week we will be talking we'll be talking about Build America, Buy America and the requirements around that, just because we want to make sure that you at least have a sort of baseline understanding of those BABA requirements as you move into the beginnings of your procurement. Those are one of those things that's really hard to fix. But we are also lining up our sort of post-award, if you will, some of our post-award guidance over the next couple of weeks and months, and want to make sure you're getting the information that you really need. So I will ask again, but we'll also stay on just for a second if you want to drop things in the chat. Oh, and Kristen said you can send office hour topics to Advanced CBO. I know we're going to do a couple of NEPA sessions. We're going to be doing a CDOT. CDOT's going to come and chat as well. But more than happy to hear other things that you'd like to hear about. And it's 3 o'clock. So thank you all for your time. We ran up right to the end today. Oh yes, Kate, we'll get that answer about UCC filings. That is in your grant the grant agreement. I think it's in Exhibit G, but we'll get you a more clear answer there. Craig, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, less of a FAQ, more of a lament. Did NTIA in its letter of credit commentary and clarifications offer any recognition that the carrying costs of letters of credit or securing the debt, has a material cost on awardees? It is like when they think about 10%, that functionally what happens at a bank is they got to set that aside and treat it differently on their own balance sheet. And so there's a material carrying cost for anything like that from a bank. And so the banks are making out, the banks benefit from BEAD. Did they talk about that at all? Recognize that? Talk about how it played out and reflection on how they might lower that burden, just so that there's more money that can go towards fixing the digital divide and less towards banks in the future?
Yeah, Craig, I love that you bring this up. I know that it's really challenging. I think it's always challenged. It's like insurance, right? Where you're paying for something that may or may not happen. But I think the feds have decided that the concern about default is is real enough, given particularly the defaults in RDOF, that additional surety, the cost for the surety, becomes worthwhile. So it's a great point, and thanks for bringing it up. All right, y'all. Well, same time next week. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
Thank
y'all.
you guys.